Takole, lep pozdrav, še vedno dopoldanski pozdrav. Torej, na vrsti je okrogla miza na temo Building Smart Central Europe Initiative, ki jo bomo v bistvu malo zreducirali, zato da enakovredno povemo še nekaj o tako imenovanem, kar v nemščini povedal Merkmal server, oziroma property server, torej to, kar je kolega Peter pravzaprav omenil že v svoji predstavitvi. Torej, ideja je v tem, da se v nekem srednjeevropskem prostoru oblikuje iniciativa Building Smarta, ki bi vključevala, pa ki bi lahko vključevala srednjeevropske države. Tako kot imajo Skandinavci svoje poglavje, tako kot imajo Švicari sami zase svoje poglavje, bi se lahko zgodilo tudi v tem srednjeevropskem prostoru, kjer bi lahko bila zraven tudi Slovenija. Mnenja so deljena in o tem bo govor tukaj v naslednjih 15 do 20 minutah. Druga stvar je pa property server, torej strežnik z lastnostmi, z opisi kot nek klasifikacijski sistem tako materialov, gradnikov, kakor tudi faz v gradbenem projektu. Okay. Let's switch to English now. So the discussion will be about the property service, as already mentioned by Peter von Polschek, and of course about the Building Smart Central Europe Initiative. We have different views. We discussed about it already last evening, and it's okay, and it's very good to actually express that ideas. So maybe I would start with the Miklos. We had the discussion about Building Smart Central Europe Initiative, and I would provoke him because I know you have a positive attitude to that initiative. So what can you explain us to say us about that initiative?
What I see on a worldwide level that there are two things which can have a common initiative. One is if countries are small, and how can you say? And the other is, which is very important, even more important, if the building culture traditionally is very similar. That is what happened, for example, in the Nordic countries, except Norway, because Norway is extremely rich and they separated, but Denmark, Sweden and Finland are forming one chapter to make life easier. It's not cheap at all to be member. That's the other reason. That it's not cheap at all to be part of the Building Smart as a Building Smart chapter. But the other thing is why they formed that also the building culture, because of climatic things, because of historical things, are very similar in the country. So it would be something interesting to make something here in Central Europe. Let's say, just an example, Austria, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia, and Czech Republic and Slovakia. It's a little bit, little bit interesting as the former Austro-Hungarian monarchy, what was there 100 years ago.
Yeah, so you pointed into that direction, and we all know that the Building Smart chapters is a rich man's club, actually. And I had that comment also for the chairman of the Building Smart in Budapest, together with Matthias Schlicker, who is also here, and he was quite shocked. Now, can we talk about the money? So what's the price of establishing the local, regional chapter?
As I'm not a friend of creating an Austrian chapter of Building Smart, because there's already a German-speaking chapter. That's now the German chapter, and in the board of directors there's at least 2 Austrians who are very much involved in what's going on in Building Smart Germany. And there is since half a year, we have now a Swiss chapter, but this is a historic thing, they had to do it. because they already claim to be partner of Building Smarts over the last 5 to 6 years, and they actually haven't been a partner. And I think it's, as we think about regions, and you said very clearly, it's about building culture and tradition and how we used to work, and we have the same heritage, because you mentioned it is the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy, and so they introduced the Austrian way of thinking to the whole monarchy, and the monarchy collapsed. But the tradition still is very close in how we build and what an architect does and what the engineer does. This is maybe very much linked still. And I think it's not the baddest thing that we have. We have a good culture in terms of architecture and engineering. And what I would really appreciate is to form a chapter of Central European countries, but more on an exchange of ideal level, not on an institutional level like Building Smart. Because Building Smart is just another club, and you say it's a rich man's club, and I'm not involved in the Austrian thinkers who want to be creating an Austrian chapter, but I heard something from 50,000 euros per year just as an annual fee for a small country like Austria. And if you say you do Central Europe, it's always about how many people are living there and how many architects are there. And Building Smart makes the living out of these fees, so they are not cheap. And so I doubt that it's helping anything, because you can't. We have what is Building Smart actually doing? It's creating IFC, and it's developing IFC. And more we have parties involved, which is like CEN, for example, that's very demanding towards IFC, towards Building Smart. The Building Smart Data Dictionary, you know, they have still very huge problems in having financing this Building Smart Data Dictionary. And so this is maybe a job that Europe can do, to say, okay, we want to have common data, we want to have common properties, because why do we want this? Why? Because it's funny, I'm Austrian, and I started with my practice in Villach, which is called Belgiak in your language, which is very close from here. And in my office, you know, I'm looking towards the south, and the left south is Slovenia, the right south is Italy. And the major cities in my area from Villach, that's Ljubljana, because this is just 1 hour by car. My major airport is Ljubljana Airport, not Klagenfurt anymore. And in Italy it's Trieste, it's Udine, so the major cities are not in Austria for me. And I can't work as an architect in these countries because of lack of culture. Not language, I can understand an Italian description of a competition or something, but I can do a design there. But I fail with doing the developed design, I fail with procurement. And if we go with common properties that are exchanged over Europe, we have an open market, especially for small countries like Slovenia, Austria. We can export our technology to, for example, Germany, because using our property server as a technology enhances us to use a German context with Slovenian language, for example. And you as a Slovenian engineer architect can read what you have to deliver for Germany in your language, which is a huge advantage in an open market. And this is why the European Commission thinks that BIM and some sort of properties that are aligned is so important for the open market.
Okay. I would now ask Xenia, since she's actually our representative in the EU BIM task group, what is actually the relation between the Building Smart maybe? Are the same guys sitting in both clubs or not? So, simple question.
No, actually not, because they, on purpose, EU BIM task group sort of distances from Building Smart, from CEN, from all institutions that deal with standardization. What is the main task or the main goal of EU BIM task group is to make public clients believe and, let's say, prepare them a tool to introduce BIM in public procurement. Because right now, all countries, except maybe 5, are still dealing with how can we put this in our tenders, not to be discriminative, to make sure that everybody can apply or can prepare bids on these tenders. This is one point. But the first point actually is to make believe public clients that this really is a gain for them. And from my experience, when we approached our public clients, because we are 100% state-owned company and we are mainly dealing with, let's say, public clients like ministries or motorway company, when we approached them, it was very clear that design itself is not the main topic that public clients are interested in. What they want is cost control during construction, and that, let's say, budget control, and that the final dates are met, so that the building is, during the whole process, under control. We have lots of auditors during public, not only procurement, during the whole construction. We have court that comes regularly and checks our projects, and we want better answers, and public clients do hear on this, like BIM, through the whole process. We will have to make sure that public clients know that the expenditures on design is more in the first phase, like you showed on your curve, because there are the most of the savings during the whole process. But what they really want to know is also what BIM model will use them when the building is built, so that their maintenance is easier. So when we address public clients, we have to address them through the whole life cycle process, as was mentioned already several times today. And I think EU BIM Task Group is focusing on this, making sure that this handbook will allow public clients to prepare tenders through the whole European countries, based on the same, almost the same level, and to make sure that public clients have really benefit through the whole life process of the infrastructure.
Yes, so obviously we have two different layers. So the two clubs actually operating in two different layers. So Building Smart being more technical community that develops, proposes technical standards. And on the other hand, so the application and uptake of these standards and the promotion and the dissemination actually goes then through the EU BIM Task Group. So we can nicely position these two communities. Now, my question for Eva here on my left is to what degree, because you put an interesting fact on the table when you talk about integrated design, so how we should actually teach and use this in education. So what is actually, my question is, what is the percentage in your opinion between how much content in, let's say, BIM course we should teach in terms of standardization and all these kind of terminology on one side, and so teaching concepts, and then like practical hands-on experience.
Okay, I think practical approach, I mean, architecture and civil engineering is by nature something that you learn by experience. It's, okay, there's some principle from mechanics, etc., which you have to learn upfront, but basically it's very practical discipline. So you cannot teach it by book, you cannot teach it by upfront lecture, you have to do it. So it's basically learning by doing it, and this is why I think that BIM decathlon and marathons, etc., are very important for people to have hands-on approach and to see and experience where the problems are. However, it is useful to have some kind of standardization in order to bring a little bit of structure into design process, which is really necessary, especially if you work in interdisciplinary context. You need some kind of order, or at least some kind of conventions for interdisciplinary team in the beginning to agree how do we work and what do we want to deliver. Because if we don't have the conventions, how do we want to work and what we want to deliver, we will not obtain your aims, and this would be cost saving, time saving, and quality increase. You will not save time and costs. Actually, it has been shown that there are BIM projects that last longer and cost more because people were not working with any kind of conventions from the beginning. They just started like crazies and produced a lot of garbage. So this is something, of course, BIM is capable of producing huge amount of information, so we really have to take care about that. I must say, technical part is very important, in my opinion. People have to at least know how IFC works. They have to know some basics about integrated project delivery, and this is, unfortunately, this is technical stuff. And I know that many people are not interested in that, but at least somebody in project will have to take care of that. So as you see, it's a very complex thing. If you work in interdisciplinary setting, you need some kind of conventions in the beginning. What I'm not in favor of is one size fits all. We know that each construction project is unique. So you will never find a set of rules that is completely standardized for every and each project. So what I think is that standards are necessary, but still in the beginning of design of construction project, you will need to sit together as team and still define your own modeling conventions as a team. And now we come to procurement. At current procurement situation, this is not possible because you don't have the whole design team in the beginning. Facility manager is lacking, user is lacking, quite often MEP engineer is lacking, so basically you have architect and maybe structural engineer who will talk how we will model. And most of the other disciplines are completely neglected out of reasons that you have mentioned, because our procurement process at the moment hardly allows involvement of all stakeholders from the beginning. And this will be a huge problem for implementing of BIM along the life cycle. So as we have seen, we have a huge number of problems from organizational point of view, from legal point of view, from contractual point of view, that also need to be solved. And this is not only a matter of education, it's a matter of public policy. And I think this is where we need to rethink the whole thing. So I don't know if I answered really precisely on your question. I have just outlined a number of problems that we are facing at the moment.
Yeah, so we always have a lot of questions when we give answers, of course. Now, Lars, how would you, since you work actually in the largest one, consultancy and planning company, you said, so how would you sell the property service or property server or to a private client or to a public one? So how would you approach them in a way that we all know something like this should exist? So Peter is actually saying that we would be happy enough to have one single such almighty server on a European level, which, by the way, I don't agree with, but still, how would you, since it is an Austrian product actually, and it's for free, so how would you recommend that to, let's say, to Xenia or to any other, let's say, private investors, private clients who are interested in a BIM-based project?
I usually do the selling job just the same way as the explaining job, right? So just consider you take a window, right? And you have different planners, and they all have to, all have to deliver information to you. So let's say you have a guy that is using a software and he's creating his own window, and he's going to call his window width, right? Then you have another company that calls the window width WW, and the next company does it with a company name in front, and so on. Now you get a schedule, or you try to produce a schedule that lists all of your windows, right? And then you're going to try to have one column that tells you which is the window width. And now you're stuck, because when this happens, you cannot put any schedule from things out of the database. So that is the basic explanation why we need standardized attributes, right? And I mean, this is completely not a new idea. This is the Building Smart Data Dictionary, this is IFC. this is like a 25-year-old idea, right? The only thing that we are claiming for is, okay guys, we will agree someday that a column has a given number of attributes and a window has a given number of attributes. We had a really interesting talk yesterday night with a girl from London, where I told her that in the German-speaking area we have some 150 attributes to describe a door. And she was laughing at me. She was like, we need some 20 in the UK, right? But we need 150 to describe this is the door we want to put in. So now, okay, we will have national and regional differences on the way we look on things and the way we plan and construct them. But we still can say, okay, all these attributes are, you know, willing to be an ending list, right? It's just a list of attributes. And now the whole idea of the property server is not to create this all from scratch and, you know, go over and over and over, but just use what we're trying to do ever since 20 years to get this list of attributes. And the idea of the property server is basically to give every country the possibility to say, okay, in our country, in Slovenia, you have to define a fire rating in the design stage. In Austria, for example, you have to do this in the pre-design stage. But that is all we're doing, right? So we just put next to the information what, we just put who does it and when does he have to do it. So this is basically it. And the idea is so simple that, you know, all the standardization institutes that we introduced this idea to in July of last year, they were like, hey, come on, this is great. This is so easy, right? And when you look at like UK PIM standards and all these things, I mean, they made a lot of regulations. And still, we as like quite complicated thinking German engineers, for example, cannot understand how they can really build buildings along with these standards, right? But still, you know, this is the whole idea. So it's a simple idea, and the idea is to, you know, when you use this property server on an international basis, and just imagine that there's standardization institutes having the ability to define this property by property, who's in charge and who's going to, when it's going to be delivered, then we're done with international standardization of PIM, actually.
So if I further provoke the discussion between, let me put it that way, the property server, in my eyes, is really a technical solution, really Austrian, German way of thinking, engineering approach, so which at the end brings really something that is related to, let's say, a software library, something that can be integrated into existing software like Graphisoft, Archicad, Revit, etc. While on the other hand, I also understand that like British at the moment doesn't want to hear about the property server because they have COBie. So what they did is actually a pragmatic approach to a list or collection of properties that needs to be delivered in different stages, but in a very pragmatic way. So Excel sheet, what can we do with Excel sheet? So you went quite a level more down to technical solution. So how can you maybe better compare these two basically different concepts, so to say?
Go ahead.
Actually, what we felt was that Excel sheets is nice for people because it's easy to learn. Everyone knows Excel and it's standard. But for BIM and BIM data, we're talking about data and we're talking about databases. So what we do is, at the end of the day, the properties from the server have unique IDs. They are unique, and you can introduce them in any SQL application. You can exchange from Graphisoft to a calculation software, thermal calculation, physics, engineering, cost calculation. You know, can do everything on database, and you have just one data. You don't distribute sheets that are a sheet. You know, every week you get 2 million of sheets. And what we wanted to focus on was that we have one set of data, you know, which is one database. And that's distributed over the whole project lifecycle.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you give us maybe a concrete example? So let's take, we have wall, okay? We are talking about wall. So if somebody understands I mean, English-speaking person would use the term wall, okay? And then we put it like IFC wall.
Yeah.
And then we would say zid in Slovenian, since I know that you also understand a bit of Slovenian. How can your property server help in such situation if you have a mixed team, like international team of designers, consultants? Because how would that exchange or that alignment of semantics actually happen through the property server?
You know, as you already found out, the property server is based on IFC and it's based on BSDD, so we are using core technology of Building Smart. And the strength of BSDD is that as you're identifying properties by their GUID, by the unique ID, you're not in language, you're in ID. So you can swap between languages because you have an ID, and you say, in Austria, we say wall, Wand. So the Germans call it Wand too. That's lucky for German, and the Swiss call it Wand too, but we have some special words that are different in Swiss German, in Austrian German, and German German. So that's helpful, because we are just talking about, on a software level, we're just talking about IDs. So we are helping the software industry because they can do one software which is valid for all of Europe, because you can swap the languages on content, not on the command, because the command is easy to translate, but we can do real one thing that's fitting for all Europe, because it's not in the context of when to deliver it, as Lars said. And we can also say, okay, that's the most important thing, we can create two contexts at the moment, with actually more. We have one which is the language, the second one is the discipline, and the third one is the time component. So, and we can distribute that for everyone. If you are in Slovenia, it's different to Austria. And you can swap now, as you can swap, okay, I'm working in Slovenian with your software. You can swap Slovenian, and you have Slovenian language, but you have German content. And for the standard default values for fire rating, for example, the system shows you the Slovenian 30 minutes, 60 minutes, because it's more or less the same. And if you do it in Germany, it automatically transposes it to the German thing, because this is the strength of BSDD, that you create the context between the different national regulations and languages. So this is the benefit, basically. And we're not doing anything about how you work together, because this is maybe academic or maybe in your office. And as you said, it's never fitting all the parameters that we suggest. So there will be more and more parameters. And we will end up with maybe 200,000 parameters for the door, which is very far away from the UK, which is with 10 or 20 sufficient. But that's okay, because you have a few on the model and you reduce the amount of data to what you want to see. An architect is not interested in structural engineering, basically. He wants to know working, yes or no. Is it bearing, yes or no, with 20 centimeters? And I want 15. You know, this is what's interesting for an architect. And the engineer wants to see more information which is related for him. So this is what we can do with the context out of the property server. So you see just 5 or 6 properties which are relevant for you.
I think the property server and COBie actually aim at the same direction, right? So it's basically the same idea. So what kind of information do I want to have? The only thing is that, like, what I think the property server solution is offering more than that is really, it makes BIM execution planning a lot easier. Because once you define who is to deliver which information, you can really drastically reduce complexity by just doing this, right? You can say, okay, you're the building physicist, you have to deliver this and this and this information into this element, right? By this stage. So this makes things really easy. I mean, at the current stage of development, it's really hard to get this information out. So it's really tough to really use the property server as it is right now. But we're currently working on complete new data interfaces to really get this information out and have front ends where you can really do this, right? Do role-based questions like, okay, what do I have to deliver? And like the whole planning complexity of interdisciplinary planning processes really gets reduced in complexity through this, right? Because then you can say, we can standardize this. Of course, we cannot do this for every project and really completely do it. But when we just say, okay, this is the minimum national standard. So if you just, go along with this, things will, you know, become a lot easier, because then you can say in the project, okay, we need this special information, or we do not need this information at all, or we can, you know, make people deliver information earlier, but then you have one schedule, okay, this is how we do it, right? And then you can make project-specific agreements. But, you know, we need this information. Especially, I think that's the most important part of the whole property server is the question, who is delivering the information?
Thank you, Lars. So I think we should conclude this panel discussion. Maybe the useful information for all the participants, all the members, would be to distribute the access so it's freely available, so everybody can see and check and learn and study and see if it's helpful, or if it might be helpful, of course. Okay, thank you very much, all the panelists.